Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening depending on where you are in this amazing world. My name is Donovan Jolly, and welcome everybody once again for another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys what are the most important charts everybody should be watching during this point in the cycle as we ultimately wait to see when the reversal point of Bitcoin will be. We're also going to be taking a look at the big picture market cycles of Bitcoin and basically comparing what we're seeing today versus other cycles and how the difference in this cycle could ultimately mean a variance inside of this cycle to some degree. Does this mean that we're going to have a lot more chop, a lot more downside price action, or are we going to see something similar to March 2020? I'm going to cover all this stuff today, so make sure you guys stay all the way to the end so you don't miss out on any of this important information. If you're new and just finding this channel, always remember to do me a favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribing to this channel for more updates. Always remember to click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos like the one provided for you here. And make sure you guys sign up and join the Discord server or download my free ebook. Links are going to be provided for you in the description for both. Now with that being said, we got a lot of really cool information to get in today, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Alrighty guys, so the first thing we're going to talk about on today's video is going to be the dollar, because in my opinion this is going to be the biggest chart, because if this chart is going up, if the dollar's uptrending, that means all of our investments in crypto are most likely going down. That's just the way this chart works. As the dollar goes up, Bitcoin goes down because people are selling their risk on assets like Bitcoin, like other equities, for cash, for dollars, for that stability. Now, I want to talk to you guys about this chart today because we're at a really, really important point. Kind of what I've been updating you guys with lately was we really needed to see a rejection, right? We'd been watching this breaking out, and when it got to this move here, that was when, you know, we were either about to start ramping up straight to about 109 to 110, all the way up here. Or, you know, if we saw a rejection like we're seeing today, that could have signaled the early reversal point. And this is actually what we're seeing so far. And it's looking really good for a fake out as far as a bull trap goes. You know, everything that we've needed to see so far for the bulls to take over inside the crypto markets, aka the bears taking over in this market, we really needed to see a rejection at these highs, and we have seen that up to this point. Now, this is a 4-hour time frame. We're going to go to a bigger time frame here in a second, but I wanted to share with you guys some Obv analysis. Now, this right here was the point where we saw our deviation, and this is a really big, important level that we need to watch here, because not only do we have resistance at about this high from 103.7 all the way up to here to about 104, right? We have a major resistance at about the 104 level. Now, with us having this resistance up here in the price, we can also see that this is a level on the OBV as well, except it's about 582K on the OBV. And so even if this decides to bounce, you know, we could go a little bit lower first, but even if this decides to bounce, we have to get above this resistance. Otherwise, this is just going to be a lower high before we keep going lower into this market. And that was what, you know, this sell-off right here that we're seeing, it was a really good thing to see, because with us making such a sizable move on the downside, you know, that puts us further and further away from that resistance, so that even if the bulls decide to come back in and start pushing the prices back up, they have a long way to go before they're ever even at a point of breaking out. If they, in fact, do get above pretty much the 104 level. It could go slightly below it, but as long as they're above this level and then they hold that, then that would signal a run to 110, and we would have a much larger move in the dollar. That would not be good for crypto. I don't see a real scenario that's valid that makes any sense where the dollar and Bitcoin go up together. Yes, it has happened, but it really just hasn't been happening over the last few years, and so I don't think that that's something we should necessarily think about or try and factor into the equation. But I mean, as of right now, we have bounced off of a support level on the OBV. This was a support level in the price as well, but it's not, you know, the greatest reaction that we're seeing based off of price. If we come over here and draw a line, this line's not going to be the ultimate answer either, but we bounced off this level and we're getting a really weak reaction. This is selling off, and so this is most likely a rejection before we fall a little bit lower. But I mean, this is going to be more of a range than it is one specific line on a chart, right? This thing can go a little bit lower before we see any sort of reaction in the bull's favor. And that's why we shouldn't get too overconfident as well. Even though we want to see this go down, we need to see it keep going down for crypto. Keep in mind that we are at a point of support. on the OBV as well as the price. And so the best thing to do is going to be playing the ranges. I mean, bearish below 104, bullish above. That's kind of the way that I'm watching it. And so that's the way that you should be playing it as well. Or, you know, that's just what I'm going to be watching for. Now, let's go to the bigger time frames, because this is where it gets interesting from a larger perspective. Now, you guys already know kind of what are the things that I've personally been watching for is the fact that over the last 5, 6 years, we've pretty much rejected off of this level every single time we've hit it, right? So we've had, this was the high here in 2016. This was our bottom of the 2016 bear market. This was our high March of 2020. Remember our capitulation that we had when all the COVID panic was going on? That was our high here. And every time we've hit this high, we have 5 impulses down. Wave 1, wave 3, wave 5, right? Wave 1, wave 3, wave 5. But each time we've actually had this sell-off from this high, we've always got a retest of that, right? We rallied all the way back up and retested it over the course of about 2 years here. And then ever since Bitcoin in 2021, for the most part, this has been us. Bitcoin's been going down and sideways inside of this big consolidation, and the dollar's been going up. The dollar has shown strength throughout that entire period of time. But one of the big things I tried to keep you guys aware of was this major resistance, right? And we really needed to see a rejection at this level. I mean, with Bitcoin doing so bad and the dollar having so much strength, we didn't want to see a prolonged sell-off where Bitcoin goes and starts crashing into an even bigger move to 20,000. We really wanted to see the dollar reject at this level. And then when it started to peak above, I know a lot of people were expecting it to just continue to break out. But I mean, with this sell-off, we are getting a nice red candle, and this is kind of a bearish engulfing candle. We aren't at any sort of confirmation yet on a close, so this can bounce and it can move still, so there's no guarantee here. But I mean, this is what we want to see. This could be the exact thing for an early reversal signal that we were looking for. Move it to a weekly time frame here. I mean, at the same time, you know, like I said, it can go either way because we haven't had a definitive close. We need to keep seeing this thing go lower. As long as that's going to be the case, then I think that we could see us actually bottoming here and having a big move. But the big thing I want you guys to also pay attention for is the types of moves that happened directly after us retesting this level, right? This is where we ended up making a big sell-off that, you know, pretty much took us back down to these low support levels. If we had another move like this in the dollar, where potentially we even went lower than that, who knows? But any sort of significant sell-off here inside of the dollar is going to create a significant rise in Bitcoin. And so I think that that's our big things that we need to focus on. I've spent a lot of time looking at the dollar chart today because I think it's the most important thing that we can look at. You know, we're facing a very, very large resistance here. It's really, really important that we actually break, or I should say, it's really important that we actually fall at this resistance and start selling off. Otherwise, cryptos are in for a pretty volatile and rough time, in my opinion. Alrighty, guys. Now, another thing we're going to come over here and take a look at is going to be the stock market being the S&P 500 index. Now, we've actually got a confirmed breakout of our inverse head and shoulder. This is pretty much our neckline, depending on where you want to draw it. I'd say about right there would be more accurate. And we have broken, retested the neckline, and now we're going back up. Now, with an inverse head and shoulder, it does signal an early reversal point, but I've seen inverse head and shoulders do this a million times, where they make the inverse head and shoulder, they break up to resistance, and then they start falling it in again, right? So it's not going to be our 100% answer. We can't go off of one specific chart pattern, but in the short term, we do have a confirmed reversal. So this is a really good sign. It's a good opportunity for us to see some rises inside the crypto markets, especially seeing the dollar showing a little bit more weakness. This is kind of why. Now, that isn't, you know, it's good to see that, but we still have it's good to see that, but we still have a ton of resistance up here. And so it's not, you know, we're not in the clear yet, but if we can get above this level at 4,160 approximately, then that's really going to be the point where confidence will step back into the markets. If the stock market can get back above resistance, maybe we rally up to about 4,300 and then pull back and do something like that. If we can get above this level here at 4,160, that is where we see a reversal point in the stock market. That is where we see a confirmed reversal point in crypto. And most likely the dollar would be just collapsing throughout that period of time. We would also see confirmation inside the dollar inside of a prolonged bearish move. And so we need to see these things play out if, in fact, we're going to be bottoming. The short-term reversal is in, but we're still below resistance. And so we have to make a higher high above this resistance in order to confirm that we're really actually going to be bullish. If the stock market confirms that, crypto's going to reverse. It's as simple as that. If the stock market's reversing, the dollar has reversed, right? And so these are kind of our big charts we're paying attention for right now. Let's actually go into the Bitcoin chart as well, and let's talk about some things. Go to the daily time frame. Now, with Bitcoin, once again, guys, I think we should just continue to expect a lot of chop. Not much is going to be changing in here, so I don't really want to get into a ton of detail. Let's get into the 4-hour time frame, see kind of what's going on. All hinges upon the dollar right now. We really need to see pretty much just the dollar make a small move to the downside. If the dollar is going to be holding support and bouncing, then we're going to expect to see Bitcoin kind of dipping, right? This is a lot of consolidation. It doesn't look the greatest, but like I said, we are at a support level, and so this can turn into literally anything. It's not confirmed by any means. And so if this turns into some type of support, whatever the heck it looks like, and we start bouncing, then Bitcoin's going to sell off. And if the dollar does that, I would expect a move like this for Bitcoin, right? We dropped back down to about 28,500. Maybe get a move back up to the resistance here at about 30,000 and a half. And then, we could still drop all the way back down and retest these wicks. Another thing we're going to go back and look at real quick here is going to be the COVID capitulation. It's just so that you guys can remember exactly what that looked like on the shorter time frames. Because this is pretty similar to what we're seeing today, right? Almost exactly the same market structure. You get the big first capitulation move, right? And then we ended up having this big move all the way back down to the midpoints of those wicks. Everybody thought that we were bearish throughout that period of time, but we had a strong move to the upside right after. And keep in mind that this was a bearish retest of this previous support, right? This is resistance now. And we rejected once, we rejected twice, we rejected 3 times. And then even in here, we were still kind of what you could consider rejecting for the most part. A lot of people were considering that rejecting, and then we just kept breaking out. And so we need to remember that throughout this period of time inside of Bitcoin, we had a very similar type of move, right? This is a similar type of capitulation type move. And so we should expect to see a lot of up, back and forth, choppy price action throughout this period of time. But keep in mind, this scenario most likely only happens if the dollar bounces back up to resistance, right? And so we're going to watch and see exactly what's going to be playing out from there. But once again, guys, I don't think it matters so much on the shorter time frames. All that matters is what the dollar does and if the S&P 500 can get above resistance. Now, let's go and talk about our larger time frames. Let's talk about the cycles, and let's just summarize some thoughts and perspectives here. Things to consider, things to consider moving forward from here. Now, I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about how to go about trading and investing in the changing market conditions, because we're at a very important point in the market cycle, a point that we've never really been at, where we're stuck between 2 different beliefs, whether the 4-year cycle is in effect and has been in effect, or whether we're actually in a period of lengthening cycles, right? And that's kind of been the big dilemma. Everybody's trying to figure out what the heck is actually going on. And I'm honestly caught in between both scenarios because I can see both scenarios very clearly. And that's the tricky part about having a plan and sticking to your plan, because the market is going to change. You're going to have to adapt to the market conditions and changing market conditions, and it's not always going to go 100% how you think it is. And one of the big things that has caught everybody off guard, if you're following the 4-year cycle theory, then what we were all expecting was a major move to close out the bull run, but we never got that major move. This thing barely even went above the previous all-time highs. You really wouldn't even consider that any type of breakout. It was more just, rejected at resistance and then fall back down to new lows. And so this wasn't anything like we've seen in a parabolic top, anything like we were used to. I mean, we can look at previous 5 waves in Bitcoin's price and know that that was just very lackluster compared to anything that we as crypto investors were used to. And so for that to kind of happen, I'm sure it caught almost every single person off guard. Even people that took profits throughout this period, they were still expecting that they were going to be able to buy back and then we'd go for one more final move. But as we got closer towards the end of the year timeframes, we didn't quite go all the way to the end of the year, but we topped at about the 8th of November. And then that's where we ultimately started to get that sell-off. And so I've been watching this, trying to figure out exactly where we're at in the big picture cycle. Because I'm just going to be honest with you guys, this is a point in the market structure where it's really testing us on every single level. And it's really causing a lot of reflection inside of the trading plan, looking at the charts to see what kind of an idea of what we can get into the bigger picture. And so one of the things that we're going to look at with the 4-year cycle is kind of how it stacks up and where the heck we're going to be from this point on, right? How long do we still have left before we're even destined for a cycle low? That's the big thing. So remember, guys, bear markets last a year based off the 4-year cycle. So if we top November the 8th, then our projected cycle low will be about November the 8th at the end of this year. And so from where we're at today, we're looking at like 175 days, pretty much half a year left, 6 months, until we are projected to get that cycle low. But we are at such an interesting point, and one of my favorite investors, a person that I've learned a great deal of, somebody that I studied and bought a course from inside the bear market, Bob Lucas, he made a really good point that I wasn't even considering because I hadn't really been following up to date with any of his videos. But I watched one of his videos, and one of the things that he pointed out was the fact that this move caught everybody off guard because it wasn't our typical cycle top that we would have expected, especially with it coming towards the end of our cycle top with the projected time frames. And what he said is, if you have a move to the upside that isn't large, then most likely the move to the downside won't be as volatile either. And that kind of had this light bulb in my head, and I instantly thought of Newton's third law. And basically what that is for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so if you have a large move to the upside, it's just the way that physics work that we'd have a large move to the downside. And that's generally what we've seen with every single Bitcoin cycle up to this point, right? When we look at previous cycles, every 5-wave that we've ever had, very large overextended price action followed by a steep decline on the downside, right? That was 93%. Once again here, very large blow off top, price goes extremely vertical, distance itself from any trend lines, and then we have a large correction to the downside, about 85, 86%. And then even the same thing happened here in 2017. This was our 5-wave from 3,000 all the way up here to 20,000. And then what followed was once again, 84% correction, mid 80% correction. And so this was something that we've seen throughout every single cycle up to this point. We were all accustomed to expecting to see a large move to close the cycle, which we didn't see at the end of our projected timeframes for the 4-year cycle top. We saw this small move, basically just went to the previous all-time highs of what we saw in April, spring of 2021, and then we've started to sell back down there. Now, inside of his video, we were over here, and he was saying that this move was the point where he was feeling very confident that the bear market was in, and then that was the move that happened shortly after his video. We had that big sell-off to the downside. Now, even though I'm still expecting that we're going to see a bounce on the short term to the upside, I think it's really important that we're considering both scenarios here, because if we are in a 4-year cycle, the best thing to do is to consider that approach, have that as an observation inside of our trading plan, because if it is true, we don't want to be caught off guard. We don't want to make the wrong decisions with our money, only focusing in on one observation. And I think that that's the big thing that we should once again focus on. For me personally, I don't have a problem with being wrong, because for me, all I would rather do is protect my capital and be a smart investor with the way I'm doing things. And I don't care if I have to restructure my trading plan. I don't care if I didn't get out the most perfect time. As long as I'm getting out, I'm making profit, and I'm keeping that profit to reinvest at lower times. That to me is what's most important. And so with us being at this interesting point in the cycle where we didn't see a true cycle top like we would expect, we really need to consider all approaches. Now, this is me only talking about the 4-year cycle right now. We are also going to get into the lengthening cycles too. I'm just giving you guys my approach. This isn't even me really giving a huge opinion on the matter. It's me kind of giving you guys my analysis at face value and letting you kind of decide at your own thought with that. Because I am doing the exact same thing as you. For me, I've been in and I've invested into a lot of high cap blue chip cryptos throughout, throughout this entirety of the low points in the cycle. And with this cycle not having this giant parabolic top, I didn't take as many profits as I would have liked. I'm still holding a lot of those blue chip cryptos, right? And throughout this period of time, as we've gotten the sell-off, if you're somebody that's still at this point of where you're holding all or the majority of your cryptos, you definitely don't want to be selling right now. Because in the short term, I do very confidently expect that we're going to see a bounce back to the upside. What does that bounce look like? Well, it's hard to say. If we're in a confirmed bear market, then we would expect that this bounce isn't anything going to be like a cycle bottom or anything. We would expect that this bounce would rally up, come up to these resistances, maybe 40,000 approximately to even mid 40s. And then we would expect a move back down to the downside, right? And so we don't really know how this move is going to work. We really have no idea because, we're at this interesting point in the cycle. But like Bob said in his video, for every action, there's an equal to opposite reaction. And so I like to remind you guys that if we didn't see a large move to the upside, is it likely that we're going to see a significant move to the downside like we saw here? 84% correction, 86%, 93%. Keep in mind that all of these cycles had a large blow off top. If this is the 4-year cycle and we never saw that blow off top, I think it's likely that this could be the bottom and that is actually our capitulation, right? And so one of the things that we could see as we get closer towards the actual projected time frames of our cycle bottom being the end of the year 2021 or 2022, we could see something like this where it's just a steady chop, a slow grind where the markets really aren't doing anything. Think of maybe 2018 throughout this period of time as an example where we kind of just, aren't really doing a whole lot, just a lot of chop, sideways action, stuff like that. I'm not saying that it's going to do that exact pattern, but how that slow grind played out over the course of that time. Now, if we didn't get a blow off top to the downside, most likely we wouldn't be going all the way back down to 20K. And one of the things I like to remind you guys of as well is the fact we've never actually retested a previous all-time high in any bear market. So if we've never retested a previous all-time high, I don't know if it's likely that we're going to this time. Of course, if we've never also had a cycle where we didn't see a blow off top, and if that is the case in this cycle where we just didn't get that blow off top, then there's a chance for literally anything at least once. And so I think that we need to really just consider a lot of different approaches. But when it comes to wrapping up this thought process on the 4-year cycle, one of the things I want you guys to remember is I don't think that now is the time to sell if you haven't. Really, the only thing that you should be doing with Bitcoin's getting at these low levels is buying more, accumulating more, and looking to hold long term. Because if this is, the bear market, we're already halfway through the bear market. And if you are looking to maybe get out, you're still in a lot of profit on cryptos that you accumulated throughout this period, maybe even lower than that. We will get a bounce back up to some of these resistances. And if you can get some, take some profits throughout that period of time, most likely we're going to see another large drop inside of the market. Altcoins will continue to get kind of washed throughout the bear market. It's just what happens every single bear market. And so as Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum holds a little bit better support comparatively, it's still going to be, a lot of volatility, a lot of big swings to the downside. And so if this is a bear market and you're looking to get out, exercise some profit taking with some that you have. Maybe you're over invested. You just want to have some that you're sitting on that you can just, feel comfortable that you've taken out of the market. I would do so when we actually come back up to these resistances, probably about $40,000. That's just kind of my thoughts on the matter. I'm going to be looking to do the same thing just as more of a personal hedge. And the reason why is because, if this is a true confirmed bear market and we bounce up to this resistance, we will see another move to the downside, and it will be a very large move to the downside. It doesn't have to break our lowest support over here. We probably won't ever go below that wick that we made in the mid 20,000s. That will most likely be our bottom before we just start the crab crawl, choppy action for the rest of the next 6 months, similar to maybe this over here, slow, boring action like that. And so if that is the case, I'm going to be simply taking a little bit of a hedge, protecting myself that I have some cash to actually buy a dip, protecting myself in that sort of a sense. But for the most part, I'm going to be holding all of my blue chip cryptos because for me, I've invested such a large amount of my portfolio and capital into bigger projects that, in my opinion, have a lot more other partners backing them, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, whether it's Chainlink, Binance Coin, any of these major cryptos, they have a lot of support in them, and that's why they've done the best inside of the cycles. And so if you're looking to accumulate, stick to Bitcoin and Ethereum at these points in the cycle, because Bitcoin in a bear market would always lead altcoins. It will always outperform, and it's just always the best thing to invest in. It's the least volatile. It's going to drop the lowest, but then when it rises, you'd be surprised at how much it actually outperforms altcoins, even inside of a point where you'd think altcoins would give a better ROI. Bitcoin is the leader of the markets, and so for me, Bitcoin and ETH are going to be the biggest focus inside of my portfolio, inside of my accumulation. I'm not even coming here and saying that we're in a bear market, because I literally don't know. I'm telling you guys that for me personally, I will do my part on hedging when we bounce back up to this resistance, just because if we're in a bear market, we'll get another dip that I can buy, and that's just an opportunity to accumulate more in that correction. And it sets you up to be able to kind of trade the swings throughout the next cycle. And so that's kind of what I'm watching for here, if in fact we are in a true confirmed bear market. Now, let's talk about the lengthening cycles and what we can see from this point. Now, with lengthening cycles, there's only really one bullish wave count that I even see. Now, with an expanded flat correction, basically the way it works, the price corrects, it has a high, it makes a high above the previous high, and then it corrects back down and then makes a low above the previous one, right? And so it kind of looks like this. It basically stops out everybody in between a range, right? The market will rally up, it'll make a resistance, it'll fall to a support, it'll rally up, it'll clear the highs of the resistance, and then it'll fall and clear the lows of the support like that, right? And that's literally what Bitcoin is in today. If we're inside of a larger lengthening cycle, then this is the major bullish correction that we're seeing. And it's very similar to this type of consolidation here, where Bitcoin was just in this period, and this was our massive capitulation back down, right? And it also can be looked at if we go all the way back down to the 2008 financial crisis. Let's go to a weekly time frame and go look at this. This move right here, this is our prime example of one thing that we have to look at when it comes to the Bitcoin price, because it looks very similar to a cycle that we already saw in the S&P 500, where it did this exact same kind of capitulation right below support before just rebounding and going up in the next cycle. And so one of the things I want you guys to remember is kind of the crab crawl that it took before we ended up getting back up to those highs. And that is something that we could definitely see play out today inside of Bitcoin, where we finished the capitulation here. Even if we retested the low point of this wick, we still could be in for a pretty lengthy period, something like that, of slow consolidation, maybe something along the lines of this. I really have no idea. I would expect it to get more parabolic than what this is showing, obviously. But I think that we really easily, if we are in sort of a more continued lengthening cycle, then our bullish wave count is literally an expanded flat correction, where we had our impulse, and then it's followed by an ABC down. It's followed by an ABC up. And then we get 5 impulses to the downside. 1, 3, 5, right? Like that. And remember that both the resistance of the all-time highs gets cleared and the support that we made gets cleared as well in both directions. And so this is honestly kind of what I've been leaning to inside of my personal trading plan, because it just looks so much like what the S&P 500 did back in 2008. And I've seen this pattern play out a number of different times. It was the same pattern that played out right here. And so I've seen this play out before, and that's why I'm really not riding it past Bitcoin to do it again. Because when I look at the Elliott wave structure of this entire market cycle, it literally just doesn't even look like we've ever finished a wave 5 in the cycle. And that's why I've kind of been leaning towards the point that, maybe we really did invalidate the 4-year cycle time frames. Maybe because we didn't have the blow off top, we didn't actually follow the 4-year cycle time frames. What if we really are in a lengthening trend? And so guys, when it comes down to it, I am really torn between each, because I can see both scenarios equally the same. And I think that maybe because Bitcoin is at a low point at the 30,000 support level, that you know, there's a little bit more fear, and maybe we get such a strong reaction to the upside that, you know, it kind of changes everybody's perspective, and then it just starts looking more obviously bullish. That's generally how it looks in every sort of major correction. But for me, I was following those 4-year cycle time frames so closely, and we technically got a top at those 4-year cycle time frames being at the end of the year. And so even though it's not a blow-off top like we were expecting, it's something we still need to consider. We can't completely write it off because there is still a lot of accuracy based off the last 2 cycles of the 4-year cycle following it again. But keep in mind, guys, that when I look at the Elliott wave structure and I look at my other technical resources, they do tell me the opposite. And so it's a really interesting point in the cycle, to say the least. I'm learning a lot. I'm sure you guys are learning a lot. For me personally, I'm really looking to just simply come at this from the most profitable standpoint I can, the least emotion attached. You know, I just want to be humble when it comes to finding a profitable decision, finding a really good form of analysis, and sticking to a plan most importantly, because we are at a really important point of the cycle where if we're in the 4-year cycle, we still have a whole nother half year left inside the bear market, whereas if we are in fact inside of a lengthening cycle, this would be expected to be our bottom before we start rocketing back to the upside. Maybe something like that, right? And so these are all things that I think we should consider. I'm super excited, to say the least. You know, for me, I've been buying a lot since these early points in the cycle. That I'm holding a lot of cryptos that, in my opinion, I've done a lot of research into, that I feel a lot more confident in. The majority of my portfolio is split between Bitcoin and Ethereum anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter so much because I have a lot of faith in those two specifically. And so this is what we're going to be watching for from here. I wanted to give you guys this update. Is all around covering a lot of different thoughts in the markets. This is what I'm seeing. Wanted to kind of give you guys everything from face value. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know whether you think the 4-year cycle is still in effect. Let me know whether you actually think that we're in a lengthening cycle. I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts. To be honest, I'm split between the two, but you guys understand that after this video. I wanted to kind of summarize my thoughts on what I think is going to be playing out. Anyways, guys, if you guys found value in this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing updates. If you guys want to join the Discord server, download my free ebook. Links are in the description. If you guys would also like to sign up for my VIP, follow the trades that I take, NFT picks, all that fun stuff, links are in the description for that once again. Check it out. Thank you guys so much for the support. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.